This is Alexa Linton, and you're listening to the Whole Horse Podcast. I'm coming to you from the Cowichan Valley on beautiful Vancouver Island in Canada, and I'm excited to be bringing amazing instructors from around the world to share their knowledge about all the ways that we can keep ourselves and our horses well and happy, and about some of the cutting edge techniques, training, and different aspects that are coming into the horse industry and changing it from within. I'm so excited you're here, and I'm excited about the times that we live in and the shifts that are happening in the horse industry before our eyes. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. It's Alexa Linton here, and you're on the Whole Horse Podcast. And today on the podcast, we're in season 3, and we're moving right along in some really amazing ways. And I'm here with Wendy Murdoch, who has developed the Surefoot equine foot pads. And Wendy, thanks for being here today.
It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. I've been very, very curious about these pads. I admit that they've started to filter into my social media and into my worlds in various ways, and I've had this ongoing and increasing curiosity about what these are for and what they help with, and so I'm very excited to be here today and get some answers to my questions.
I'm so glad that you have me on, because I love talking about Surefoot.
Excellent. Now I know, for some of our listeners, they were listening into Robin Hood and Sinead McCann and the T-Touch system. And I noticed as well that there's going to be some Surefoot pieces with their workshops this summer. So there's these really nice integrations that are happening with this product this amazing product you've developed. So tell us a little bit more about you, Wendy, and how this came into being.
So I'm going to give you a little bit of background, because I think it'll help tie in some of the connections.
Yeah, totally.
In 1984, I was a grad student at University of Kentucky, and on October 3rd, a horse reared up and flipped over backwards and rolled over me. And he punched my femur through my hip socket and kicked me between the legs when he got up. So in 15 seconds, my entire life changed.
Wow.
I was 27. I wound up in the hospital. I obviously had surgery. And while I was in the hospital, a friend of mine gave me a Linda Tellington-Jones newsletter. So my connection with Linda and Robin goes way back to basically 1984. And then in 1985, a year to the day after my accident, I went to my first team training, and that was in Wisconsin with Ellie Jensen and Linda. And so I met Linda, and I was a really serious research scientist at the time, working in equine reproductive physiology. And so I came home, and my life started to change, as often happens when you meet Linda.
Yes, so I've heard.
Yep. And so I quit grad school. I was going to get a doctorate in biomechanics. I quit grad school. I started training with Linda. I met Robin in '86 in Colorado. And in '87, Robin asked me to go with her to Australia. And so I went to assist her for 6 weeks, and I stayed in Australia for a year. So I have a big connection to Australia.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So that makes a lot of sense.
Right? Does this start to tie things in?
Yes.
I was like, I think I better give this background. So then I also met Sally Swift in '86.
Yes.
Kim Wallness was getting ready to go to Gawler. And so I went to a team training with Linda, and I met Sally, and I apprenticed with Sally in '92. So, I have all this background, being a scientist, working with Linda, working with Sally, and I enrolled in the Feldenkrais training, which is the basis of the teamwork, in 2001. And I did the 4-year training in the United States, and then I trained with Mia Siegel, who was Feldenkrais's assistant, and who's the person that Linda took when she did the training in the 70s.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay, you see where the connections
are?
Right?
And of course, I have Sally Swift's book on my shelf and adore it. Her centered riding book is unreal.
Yep. So my day job for the past 30 years has been teaching riding. And I took the Feldenkrais training to make my job teaching riding easier, to help with my teaching, myself, my own body because of my injuries, and also to have another career if I ever decided I didn't want to freeze my butt off or boil in the heat in the standing in an arena. So that's kind of the backdrop of the thinking behind Surefoot. Is the whole concept with the Feldenkrais method is non-habitual movements. It's discovering possibilities. It's looking at all different options, asking tons of questions, right? It's very Socratic.
Yeah.
And so in 2012, there's a facility here in Virginia called Park. And I used to go there and I would teach once a month, and I would teach 2 days once a month. So I'd go on Monday and I'd go back on Tuesday, and a lot of times I'd see the same people. And so in May of 2012, I went on the Monday, and one of my clients that had been my client for 3 years, she came in with her horse, and her horse was lame in the right hind leg. Mm-hmm. And she had changed the saddle that she was riding in from her dressage saddle to a jumping saddle during that month. And then the horse got quicked by the farrier. And the bottom line was the saddle was crooked, and it was putting some pressure on the back right corner of the horse. So we switched back to the dressage saddle on Monday. He was still lame. So that night I went home, and this is probably another name you know, Dr. Joyce Harmon.
Oh, I haven't heard. No.
Honestly,
you need to.
So Joyce wrote the Pain-Free Back and Saddle Fit books, both Western and English. I think of her as the Consumer Reports of saddles because she's not trying to sell you a saddle. She's trying to educate you as to what you as a consumer need to be aware of when looking at your saddle and that sort of thing. She's a holistic veterinarian. I've known her since 1990.
Wow.
We're really good friends, and she's one of the top holistic vets in the United States. She's awesome.
Okay, looking her up for sure.
Yeah, she'd be great on your podcast.
Excellent.
So I was talking to Joyce on the phone, and she wanted to stand at her computer instead of sit. And this is 8 years ago now. So it was before Veridesks and all those things really had come out. And she started talking about how she wanted to stand on some type of pad. And so while we're chatting, I'm on my laptop and I'm just tapping away. And she starts talking about how they put dogs on different things for rehabilitation. So I'm looking at these dogs, and they're standing on all different kinds of air-filled objects and different things. And I'm like, well, that's really interesting. So I said to her, do you think this would work for a horse? And she said, I don't know, but time it for 15 seconds. So I grabbed something out of my shed, and I drove to the lesson, and I walked up. The horse's name was Dante. And I walked up to Dante, and I said, I'm going to do this thing underneath your horse's foot. My students are all used to me doing very odd things, effective but odd. And so I stuck this thing underneath his foot. I set it down. I timed it for 15 seconds, and he walked off sound. So twice in my life, 15 seconds has changed my life. The first time was with the accident, and then meeting Linda and Sally and all those people. And the second time was Surefoot.
Wow.
And it was mind-blowing. And so I had a really good friend there, Catherine Wyckoff, who's another Feldenkrais practitioner, and she's also a hippotherapist, therapeutic riding. And she was there, and I was like, Catherine, you got to come see what I'm doing. And so she came over, and the second horse was a little quarter horse that had been doing Western pleasure. Mm-hmm. And the owner wanted to do eventing. So she wanted the canter to be better. So I just messed around with that horse. In an hour, we had a beautiful round canter. The next horse was Catherine's horse, a halflinger. They use them for hippotherapy and for driving. And halflingers don't tend to have the best canter. And in an hour, we had a perfectly round canter. So now I know I'm like, what?
You should see my face, everyone. I'm like, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm like, what is going on? So then I started calling up my dressage friends. I'm like, can I come over and stick some stuff under your horse's feet? And my friends are really good. They're like, sure. So I did that. And then I think that's when I called Bob Bowker, because I've known Bob from a long time ago, Hoof Fest out in Dayton, Washington, and also at MSU, because Hillary Clayton is another person that I know well. And so I called Bob and I said, Bob, I'm doing this thing. What do you think? And he started talking about how they had used a washcloth and seen change in blood flow, the thing that you mentioned to me. Right? Mm-hmm. So he thought it was, of course, not unusual, because he'd already seen something. And I'm like, great, okay, thanks. And so I just started working with horses, and I flew to Washington State to do a clinic. That was Memorial Day weekend. And I didn't bring anything with me. And the minute I got out there, I was like, I need a pad. So we found something. We started messing with the horses, and they're all changing. And one of the changes that is the most fascinating, which we can only guess how most of this is working at this point, but the horses get calm. So they go from anxious to calm. They go from sympathetic fight and flight to grazing, to relax,
parasympathetic,
head down, eyes closed, deep breathing. Another person that I contacted, and I don't know if you've heard of Dr. Stephen Peters. He's a human neuropsychologist. He's written a book called Evidence-Based Horsemanship, and he's been studying human brains for a very long time. He's very well known in his field, very expert. And I contacted him and I was like, this happens fast. And he's like, yeah, fast. And then I went to his home because I think that was the second year, and I worked with his horses. And he was like, there are breathing changes in 3 to 10 seconds. And that's repeatable. You can time it. There are breathing changes in 3 to 10 seconds. There is, the classic signs of relaxation. And what I tell people is, the horses only have so many ways of showing us relaxation. Eye blinks, eyes closing, ears relaxing, neck lowering, licking and chewing, breathing, sighing, But the question is, how do you get there? And we're getting there by placing a pad underneath the horse's foot and activating the horse's own sensory system to make his own internal changes. And that's what's different.
Yeah.
Is that Surefoot is an offer to the horse, and it allows the horse to become self-conscious, if you will, self-aware. And with that self-awareness, horses change behavior, balance, and movement. And that's the piece that, for me, it's not what we see, it's how we got there. That we got there by making an offer to the horse, placing a pad under his foot, allowing the horse to choose whether he wants to step off, stay on, whether he wants this pad or that density, whether he wants it under this foot or that foot. Our job as the person is to facilitate the horse's process and to respond to the horse in his process, not dictate to the horse what we want. Right? So I think of Surefoot, everything, I'm trying to think of where else the horse gets that degree of choice. And I personally can't think of anything else. Everything else we do with horses is training. It's something we do to them. Or like, we want you to stand still. We want you to pick up your foot. We want you to walk through the skate. We want you to get in a trailer. We want you to turn right and left. It's things that we impose on the horse, that good, bad, or otherwise. And that's the differentiation, good or bad, right? Good, bad, or otherwise. We're imposing our ideas on the horse and telling him what he has to do.
Yeah.
With Surefoot, we're saying, what would you like? Would you like hard? Would you like soft? Would you like left front, right front, diagonal pair? And the horses get it. They get it. They get that they have choice. And the hardest thing when I'm starting with a client or a rider is to allow the horse choice. So if the horse wants to walk off, you let them walk off. And that jangles so many people, because it's like, no, the horse, I have to be the leader and the horse has to do it and it has to stay. And I'm like, nope, sorry, none of those rules apply.
It doesn't work like that here. Yeah,
right. Yep. And they're like, what? And I mean, there's all different levels of what, but we don't even realize how much we're invested in the horse doing what we've said. So a simple example, I go to pick up a foot and they're like clucking, cluck, 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 come on, pick up your foot. And it's like, I don't care. If they pick up their foot, that's great. If they don't pick up their foot, that's information.
Yeah.
Right? What kind of information? Maybe he's standing, that's his supporting leg. Maybe there's more weight on that leg. Maybe I need to pick another foot. If a horse has had its foot picked up to be cleaned out, they know basically what I'm asking. I might be asking it slightly differently because I really want to be careful not to knock them off balance when I pick up their foot. But they understand I've reached down to pick up their leg. And there's a lot of horses that are not secure standing on 3 legs.
Oh, for sure.
right?
Yes.
And
Big
so,
time.
yeah. And so that's one of the things I want to learn. I want to know, can they pick up the leg? Yes or no? If they pick it up, is it only bending at the knee, or do they bend at the elbow, or just the fetlock? Or maybe they have to put it down right away.
Yep.
And so I'm already gathering a lot of information about this horse in the simple act of lifting a hoof.
Mm-hmm.
And then the offer is, and again, how I approach it is I make sure the horse is okay. I've had horses that were not okay with me 10 feet away with a pad. Okay. So that
Yes, I was wondering that.
right? But the bell curve is I approach with the pad. I let them sniff it if they want to. A lot of horses ignore me at first. And then I make sure that they're, not scared. I'll drop it on the ground and I check. Do they jump back? Do they look sideways? Or do they just stand there? Okay. So I look for the signs that tell me, all right, I can go to the next step. And then I pick up the foot and I set it on the pad and I step back. And if they step off, it's totally fine. If they stay on, it's totally fine. If they slip the pad around, I mean, that's the sort of the beauty of the system is as long as you keep your hand away from the foot and listen to the horse, there's no fail. It's all investigation. It's all asking questions and observing. It's all about how did that horse react or respond? Did he, step off right away? Like yesterday, I did a demo at Marion DuPont Equine Center, which is part of VTech, and it's in Leesburg. And I went up and I probably had 8 or 9 veterinarians from this teaching school. And I had 2 different horses, and they were completely different. So they're both used in research, and the first horse could only stay on the pad for seconds, but we still saw the breathing changes, the head down, that sort of thing. The second horse was like, I'm not leaving. You put a pad under my foot, I'm going to stay here for the rest of the day. So we had this like huge variation in the population of 2. But I loved it because this is where it's so interesting to see how each horse, given choice, how they respond. And the information that we gather is so critical. So if a horse walks off the pad, and there's several reasons why they might walk off, but that first horse, he lost his balance. He would move his head and suddenly he'd be going, because you think about a 40-pound head at the end of a 3-foot lever arm. He swings his head to the side and, I'm falling and I have to go after my foot or my head. And so many people don't recognize that the reason we have behavior problems, it's really balance problems.
Yes, I've absolutely seen that.
Right? And the more I do Surefoot, the more convinced I am that 99% of behavior problems are balance problems. And we have failed to recognize what's really going on in the system that's causing the behavior. And one of my best examples of that is that I went to an equine rehab center and I had 15 minutes because I was catching a flight. I had 1 pad. I had the half physio pad. And I walked in and I'd met the woman at a conference the 2 days before. So I'd known her a little bit. And I walk in and I look down the aisle and I see this gray horse. And I'm like, I want your gray horse. And she says, no, you don't. He's a butthead. And I'm like, oh, yes, I do. I want that horse. And she argued, no. And I'm like, look, I only have 15 minutes. That's the horse I want. And so she relented and she brought him out. And I was on the right side, so I went to the right front. And I picked up the right front. I popped the pad underneath his foot. I set the foot down. In under 10 seconds, all behavior stopped. Mm-hmm. And she looked at me and I was like, look, that's what I'm trying to tell you. This is a balance problem. The horse is not feeling secure in his balance. And so he exhibits that with poor behavior, just like anybody else would do if we felt out of balance and anxious. Yeah. And I actually put her on the pad and I watched her. It hit her vagal nerve so fast. And I don't know if you've talked to your group.
Oh, we have talked a lot about the vagus.
Awesome. I love vagal.
We got good vagal foundation around here.
Great. So this woman flushed instantly and she was about to cry in under 2 seconds.
Yeah.
It hit her that hard. And it's like we've seen really interesting things happen with people on that pad. But my point being, vagal wants to feel safe. That's its number one question. Am I safe?
Absolutely.
And with Surefoot pads, I can meet a horse and in just a few minutes, they suddenly recognize, oh, wait a second, first it's, who are you?
Yeah.
And then the next thing I know, they're putting their feelers on me and they're investigating me and they're like, who are you? You know, you've offered me something no one else has offered me. You've offered me choice and you've offered me comfort, and I feel safe. And so the horses really quickly, and again, there's a bell curve, right? This is not 100%, nothing is. But in that bell curve, the horses in minutes drop their necks, breathing changes, 3 to 10 seconds, eye blinks, licking and chewing, facial muscles relaxing, change in stance, change in balance. And I often do this with riders on, because my day job is teaching riding. And if I can't get to the rider, if the horse is dancing around, I can't do my job.
Yeah.
So I'll spend 5 minutes putting pads underneath the horse's feet. And the next thing, the owners complain, the riders complain, because the horses are dragging them back to me because they want to get on the pads.
And that's funny. Let's do more of that.
Oh yeah. So 8 years ago, nearly 8 years ago, I discovered this thing, and it's literally taken over my life. I'm talking to you. I've done a bunch of podcasts. I've got teams of people in different parts of the world now, training in Surefoot, teaching Surefoot. I went to AAEP, which is the American Association of Equine Practitioners, in December, and there were 3 lectures talking about proprioceptive rehab. And that category didn't really exist in the idea of from the foot until I created Surefoot. And now I have some universities, they're about to do studies to start to see what muscles are activated standing on the different density pads. They're looking at gait analysis, they're looking at proprioception. I'd love somebody to look at what's happening in the brain.
Oh, I was going to say, that's where I want to go. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm training in osteopathy at the moment, and like I have to do a thesis, and I'm like, ooh, that'd be very fascinating. That'd be a very fascinating thesis topic: vagus nerve and proprioception and calming, and
absolutely. And so that's the thing. Whenever I talk to someone about Surefoot, they always want to talk to me from their known world. And I totally get that, right? I totally get that. And they're all right. I mean, if you want to talk about acupuncture, we're looking at ting points on the cornet band.
Absolutely.
If you want to talk about, myofascial, we're hitting all the fascia. If you want to talk about proprioception, we're hitting that. If you want to talk about Bob stuff with Merkel cells and Ruffini and Pacinian receptors, we're hitting that. Mm-hmm. There isn't anything we're not hitting, because what you have to realize is that entire horse has to organize over those 4 little feet.
Which is wild to think about.
Oh, it gets,
it's mind-boggling. Really, yes.
Right? And the more you start to recognize the incredibly sophisticated system that this is, the more you appreciate what horses do for us.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And that's the thing for me is, I went and took Bob's course last Easter about the hoof, and I've worked with Hillary Clayton. I used to organize courses at her facility at MSU, 4-day, dynamic horse workshops. And I've worked with Joyce Harmon with Saddle Fit, and I've studied anatomy with John Zahorik. And, I'm a research scientist, so I'm always putting things through that filter of how is this working? What is happening? And the bottom line right now is we still don't really know.
Yeah.
But we have enough evidence from around the world to know that it's something.
Totally.
And it's powerful.
Totally. So for those of my listeners that aren't completely maybe tuned into the idea of proprioception, because I don't think we've really touched deeply onto it yet on this podcast. Would you be willing to just give a little bit more of a sense of what that what that is?
Here's my example.
Yeah.
You're driving down the highway at 60 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. You reach into the grocery bag in the back seat. You find the Snickers bar and you pull it out. So
I've never done that.
You haven't?
I do it all the time. I'm a chocolate fiend, and they always put them down at the bottom of the bag. Why?
So that you can use your proprioception.
Totally.
So proprioception is the ability to know where our body is in space. And there are some people that don't have good proprioception. But the other thing you have to realize is that proprioception can be affected by a number of things. So first of all, it gets a set point. A farrier is a great example. They're used to a lot of physical work. So their proprioceptive set point gets it requires more input than, say, somebody who's used to doing really fine, delicate work with their hands, right? So proprioception can get altered. And that's one of the things you have to realize is it can get altered. And the proprioceptors are primarily in joints, right? So our ankles, our hips, around our seat bones, there's a lot of proprioceptors that they have to think of it as sort of telling us where we are in space. And when, this is a classic example everybody knows, you're walking down some steps in the dark and it's really dark and you can't see where the last step is and you think you're at the landing and there's one more step.
Oh yeah.
Right? Your entire body organizes for the landing and it's not there. And you, right? Or you stumble and you have to catch yourself. Or the other way around, you think you're like at the landing and it's higher, right? Yeah. So that feeling of higher or lower, that's proprioception. Your nervous system organized for this is where the step is. Oops, it's either sooner or later. And we don't even realize how much we use that sense all of the time. It keeps us from running into doors, right?
Most of the time.
Like doorways. And it keeps us from, like banging our body because we know where our body is in space. But proprioception can be altered, smudged, and shrunken. And injuries are a great place where this happens.
Oh, yes.
So, if you have an injury and say, you've hurt your hand and you stop using your hand right now because it's damaged and you kind of cuddle it a little bit and you kind of keep it safe, the map of your body gets smudged and shrunken. And when you're better, if you don't redifferentiate the map, you use it as a smudged and shrunken map. Okay. So we're looking at motor cortex, we're looking at mapping, we're looking at knowing where our body is in space. And horses also have this map of their body, and it can also be altered. So recently I was in Australia, and this was a really interesting horse. It was a Grand Prix jumper. We were there to do some, my friend has the thermography unit. She was there to do scans. He had capped his hocks. And we brought him in from the field. She did her scans. We had him in cross ties. We had him in the barn. Everything was great, blah, blah, blah. We go to take him outside to do Surefoot because you always want to start in a more open space. And she went to put a pad under his left front foot and she couldn't lift it. It was like a post to the ground.
Yeah.
So she went around the right side and picked up his foot and he startled like he had never seen anybody on that side.
Yep.
To me, that says that something happened to his map and he's not really clear about what's going on over here.
Totally. I've absolutely met horses like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I just stepped in because she was unfamiliar. I was really glad she saw that because I tell people, it looks so easy, but you always have to work toward your outliers.
Yeah.
And so I just spent some time working with the right front, and then I came back to the left front, and pretty soon I could pick up the left front. Pretty soon he was grazing, he was relaxed, he wasn't nervous eating, like there was a huge change. But my impression of this horse was that he had lost his sense of that right front leg, which could explain the injury that he suffered with the hocks, right? And so after doing Surefoot, we had brought that part of his body, in my opinion, back into his sense of who he was. Now, how do I know that for sure? I don't, right? Because I'm not in that horse's head. But I can look at what I see in terms of I start out, I can't pick up the left front. He spooks from the right front. When we get done, we can put the pad under either feet. He's definitely more relaxed. He's more in balance. And so that behavior of spooking and shying is now gone. So to me, one of the things that Surefoot does is it allows the horses the chance to sense their body in terms of how they're meeting the ground. And you'll see a lot of them, they'll close their eyes and they'll start to sway and rock and look like they're in la la land, right? And you walk them off and they're ready to go, but they've been experimenting and exploring. And I talked to Dr. Clayton, she says this is not postural sway, it's too big, right? So there's something else going on. And that's the thing is, what's going on? Well, we know we're hitting all these sensory systems.
Yeah, but there could be fascial unwinding. There could be all sorts of things going on.
Exactly. But what we see is a more calm, relaxed horse better balance, improved movement, able to think, able to learn, more in relationship with the person because they recognize you brought them comfort, not being, fooling around. Can we talk about fooling around for a minute?
Yes, please.
Okay.
As a stress response?
Talked to Robin about fooling around already?
Yes. Yeah. Right. And I actually learned about it years ago in terms of dogs.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
So horses fool around too. And I love how Robin describes it as domesticated flight. Right?
Right. Yes.
And that's, but the thing is, and I'm going to give you a little example that I think your audience can appreciate or relate to. So many people want to think of us as different from horses. And I find that the predator-prey mantra is way overblown. It's way out of proportion because I take people on horseback safari to Kenya. I have watched hyena walk through antelope. They're not hungry. The antelope, no, they're not hungry. Nobody cares. It's like, bye-bye, you're going to your den. So my example is, do you have a spouse or a significant other?
No, not at this point.
Okay, great. But you can relate. So
I can relate.
You're working for your boss, and your boss says you have to go to this dinner party, right? And so what's the first thing we do when we have to go to something that we really don't want to go to? We try to get out of it, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Okay. So what is the first thing the horse do when he gets into a strange environment? He tries to get out of it, right?
Yeah.
Like he wants to flee. We want to get out of it. Okay, I'm sick, or I have another appointment. My mother needs me. I have to go see her. She lives 2 hours away. I can't make it. You're laughing.
I've never done that before, ever. Yes.
So we both have that response. I don't want to be in this environment. How can I get out? The second thing that happens, so you walk into the party and the person you came in with immediately leaves to go to a meeting and they leave you standing at the door. The next thing you do is you check for the exits. Where are they? Okay, there's the door behind me. I see one over there. What's the minimum time I can spend in this space and get out? 5 minutes? Can I do it in 5 minutes, right? What's the horse do? He walks into a space and he goes, what's the shortest time I can be here? How can I get out?
I know the other thing that I do is I look for the food table.
I was going to say that too, right?
Where's the food?
We nervous graze.
We do, yeah.
Right?
Totally.
So the horse, if he can, he starts to nervous graze and he just looks around, with his head down and he's like, okay, I'm just going to eat here. I'm going to try and satisfy myself by eating, but I'm really not okay. We nervous graze.
Oh, totally.
Before we nervous graze, we usually do something else. We go to the bar.
Right.
Get a drink.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And so we get a drink to
calm
our
ourselves.
Anxiety level.
Right.
Well, the poor horse, he can't get a drink. Right? We don't offer, G&T for equine sitting at the bar on the side there so he can walk in and have a G&T and chill out and be okay in the space. So he can't do that one. He has to walk in. He's going to go for food, right? So we now have flight, right? Food. And, the next thing is there anybody here that is a horse person? There's one.
Right. A friend who could talk with me.
I'm going to flock over there and I'm going to be with her and she's going to make me feel better because we can talk horses all night long in this really boring party that I don't. What do horses do? Friend. Is there a friend in here? Look, there's a little tiny pony. I don't know him, but right now he's my best friend.
Totally.
And so they flock.
Yeah. And you see that like a horse that goes in a horse trailer with another horse for like 30 minutes.
Instant
and then
bonding.
They're inseparable.
Right. And when you get home, they piss off and go the opposite direction.
Right.
Not my friend, really. You were only my friend in need. You're not my friend in need.
Do I even know you?
No, not anymore. Right?
Yeah, totally.
So my point being, we have the same responses, but we couch them and color them and put stories around them, but we react in the same way. And so the other one is the life of the party. The fool around person.
The fool around person.
The one who's obnoxious and comes over and spits in your face while he's talking to you. Like you're like, oh, go away. Right? But he's constantly fooling around because bottom line, he's really not okay. And so the way he expresses not okay is to be the life of the party or entertain or, be obnoxious or, fake bad jokes.
Yep.
And so, what do? We go, oh, I don't really want to be around you, or I'm just going to go over here and sit in the corner. But that person, that horse is not okay. And when we don't address the not okay, when we simply tell them, quit it, stop it, don't do that, stand still, stay over there, get out of my space, we're not acknowledging the thing they need most.
Yeah.
Safety, comfort, companionship.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we've isolated them and we've driven them more to their friends or into fight or into flight, into one of the other behaviors.
Totally.
Because we've said, you're bad, get out of my space. I'm not going to acknowledge your problem. And by the way, stop.
Just stop it now. Yeah, totally.
Just stop it, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Or the horse that has the inappropriate behaviors of space invading.
Yep. They just want to climb in your lap.
Yep. They're not okay.
Yeah.
An okay horse stands there and dozes off while you're talking.
Yeah.
And you don't have to chase them or harass them or anything like that. They're grounded and they're secure and they're okay in their environment. They don't feel threatened. And so, you know, when we fail to acknowledge, and it doesn't matter if it's a person or a horse, because I remember the kid that put ink down my back in junior high school. When we fail to acknowledge that you're not okay, we lose the opportunity to help. We lose the opportunity to show them, look, here you go. This is what you really need. And this is what, then you'll be okay. Because what you're telling me is you're feeling unsafe, you're feeling insecure, you're feeling threatened, you can't escape, and now you just have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then we get and then we label the horse the butthead.
Yeah.
Right? And now we trap them in our self-image of them.
Yeah, because it becomes almost like a rule of them. This horse is.
Correct.
We see that all the time.
One of the saddest things with the fool around horse that I worked with at the Thoroughbred Rehab Center was that the trainer wouldn't use the pad because the trainer had locked that horse into being a butthead and wouldn't allow him to be something different.
Change. Yeah.
Right. And that's really our failing. And in the horse world, it's very common that we're almost arrogant about the fact that we have labeled a horse and he's bad and I have to do this to get him to be in the right spot.
Yep.
Instead of going, wait a second, if I was that horse, I could totally relate. Now, what do I need to do safely? Right? I'm not saying allow inappropriate behavior, but what can I do to offer that horse safety and comfort so that he can change? So that we're not continually recreating this story that we've made up about this horse that keeps him locked in and therefore labeled and therefore treated in a certain way by everybody else who gets near him.
Yep. Absolutely.
And this is where Surefoot can be so helpful in terms of changing people's perception. And that's one of the biggest things that is what drives me, is that how can I show you what this horse really is? That the behaviors that you're looking at are behaviors, but the behaviors have a cause, and the cause is poor balance. And if I offer balance and security and comfort, that horse can change, and then you can do what you want because the horse is now working with you. You're not dealing with vagal nerve reporting, I am not safe.
Yep. Yeah.
And so, you know, like the veterinary hospital that I was at yesterday, they're getting all these horses in, they're being referred into this clinic. This is where they're coming in, and by the time they get there, they have a lot of problems. And now they're supposed to do MRIs and other things, and these horses are not comfortable. So we're actually looking at how can we develop products specific, using what we've already developed, specific to your application so that these horses can be comfortable while you have to do these exams. Right. So Surefoot, like I said, it's taken over my life. And we keep growing and expanding because I keep seeing needs that we can answer.
Yeah, I was going to say there's lots of space for this to come in and be a solution in a really simple way. So I mean, I have so many questions for you, Wendy.
Okay, go.
You know, one, because I venture a lot into the more woo-woo side of things and energy medicine and stuff. So I can't help but ask about this, you know, idea of grounding, because I tend to bring this in a lot with, like, you know, with my horse clients and for myself, and I I'm
But I think
consistently
we
working
can
with
keep it
this.
really simple.
Hmm.
Okay, in that the foot is a sensory organ,
Yes,
and it has to meet the ground in a certain way to be secure,
totally.
right? Now, Surefoot's not going to solve poor shoeing, poor trimming. It's not going to solve underlying issues. However, if it's a habit,
Yeah.
or if you need to offer comfort like a laminitic horse while the horse is getting treatment, Surefoot can really help. And the reason being, the horse gets a chance to explore his own habit about how he's standing, and the nervous system is designed to seek ease,
Yes,
right? But you
absolutely.
have to have the choice. If you don't know where to look, you can't find it. So I had a demo at an expo once, and I had a tinker, and it had lots and lots of feathers, so I couldn't see how the foot was standing on the pad. But I put it on the hard pad for a few minutes. When I took it off, literally it had half a foot, not front to back, but literally side to side, half a foot impression on the pad. And this horse was nervous and anxious. And I said to the audience, wouldn't you be if you're standing on the outside edge of your foot and not feeling it flat and secure?
Yeah.
Right. And so again, we
Yeah.
can relate back to ourselves, absolutely grounding, but the feeling of our foot solid to the earth, making contact with
Oh,
the
yeah.
earth,
Yeah.
and fully in a supported way. And with the pads, they're going to give the heat and pressure. So if there's a higher part of the foot or whatever, the pad is going to give into that heat and pressure, so it normalizes it. And I actually think this is one of the things that's going on, is it normalizes the pressures so that the horse senses this change. And then that allows the proprioception, the nervous system, the fascia, everything starts responding to, oh, there's even weight.
Yeah.
Right? And so, yes, they absolutely become more grounded.
I love that.
Agree.
Well, and I know for myself, when I get really centered and grounded and stable on my feet, my energy moves from my head down into my body. There's this palpable relaxation in my system. And it's something that I teach humans a lot, because I think that we exist in a very ungrounded state a lot of the time, not accessing our body more so, just
we get very into our heads and forget that we're actually a movement-based creature.
Totally. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so that's my teaching is all based in Feldenkrais, which is all about movement.
Totally. I love it. You have like the perfect background for all this. It's so great.
So I'm always like, people ask me questions and I'll have them move, or I'll answer it in a question about movement, because we're motor-based creatures, and the closer we are to movement, the better off we are. Right.
Yes.
Feldenkrais said you can't think a thought without a movement, and that we act in accordance to our own self-image. So if I have a movement of tightening my shoulder all the time, well, of course, I'm going to have a nervous anxiety because I've lost my grounding. But if that's my habit, it's my habit. It's not who I am. Yeah. And then if I can do a shoulder clock. Oh, look, there's another place. And then I can be in a different mindset.
Absolutely.
Same with the horses on a much simpler scale, because they don't have the neocortex. They have a little bit of neocortex. Yeah. The beauty is they can't make up stories the way people do.
Yeah. Lucky things.
Yeah.
I tell you, sometimes those stories are very annoying. There's real blessings to being a human, but also sometimes
I always say, we can dream up Star Trek and make it so, and have, iPads and tablets, and horses can't do that. Right? No. They're a much simpler creature. They're much more close to, but it's all about movement. And I think with Surefoot, so I think with Surefoot, what we're doing in a lot of cases is restoring the system. Think rebooting your computer.
Yes, like a reset. Yep.
Yes, because they're born with that motor pattern. In other words, they're hardwired for movement because they can get up and run within an hour of birth. And we are more firmware because while we're wired for movement, not everybody crawls the same, not everybody walks at the same time. Right? So we have all these possible sort of, not errors, but variations.
Yes. Yep.
Right. And horses have very few variations. In other words, if they're not, if they don't tolt in the field, then teaching the tolt is going to be super hard to do because it's not hardwired into the system. Yeah. But I think the system gets, lots of ditterists and books and magazines and everything piling up on top with poor saddle fit or poor teeth or bad feet or, environmental conditions or health issues or injuries. And so all this stuff gets piled up on top. And then we're just kind of dealing with this little bit of movement up here instead of the original.
Totally.
And I've seen Surefoot make a change in 40 minutes and reset a horse from tilting its head sideways to being perfect walk, trot, canter in one session.
Yep.
So it was like we just swept away all of this stuff and just hit the reset button and boom, there you go.
And what I know about horses, they want to be well. Their body wants to be well. Very, very strong sort of gearing towards that. You know, you don't have to put a lot into the system to create change. So so that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Feldenkrais said health is the ability to recover.
Yep.
And so horses, most of them can recover. And the ones that can't, they're not healthy. I mean, you look at it, they're just, they're not going to recover. They're not healthy. And so, either we have to figure out what the medical condition is that's causing them to not recover, or, you know, we're not all meant to live out our life at 100 years. So
exactly.
We have to look at that. But, you know, if we can give them the chance to restore back to the reset button, you know, and bring them back to what they were designed to do, that original design that came with that horse. And that's really what I see so often with Surefoot is this restoration of function. And it's fascinating and so interesting.
I bet. So a couple more questions that I have, and then we'll get into some resources that you have and how to contact and connect with you. So one of the things I'm super curious about, two last questions. So one is there a difference working this with a shod horse or an unshod horse?
No difference, and it doesn't matter if they have boots on either, which is like,
okay, I was going to ask about that as well.
Thing,
yeah, totally.
Right. I mean, that was one of the first questions I had, and I answered it really fast. There is no difference. And I've had horses in different types of boots and still see changes.
Okay.
Which is kind of mind blowing.
Awesome. That's great to know. Because I'm sure there's some listeners that are like, I don't know if this is going to work for my horse. So that's amazing. And I would love to know a little bit more, because I know that there's different types of pads. You're talking about like a more firm pad versus, you know, some other things. So,
so we have, in the sort of regular series, if you will, there are 6 different pairs of pads. There are 4 different densities and 2 styles. So we have flat, which is 2 inches. It's 10 by 12 by 2, comes in pairs. And that is in hard, firm, medium, and soft. And then we have 2 that are angled, firm slants and hard slants. And they're angled. So when you put the foot on, you can make them heel high, or you can put them heel low, or sideways, pronate, supinate. So there's 6 pads in that series. 2 are slants. And the other 4 are hard, medium, soft, hard, firm, medium, soft. Right. So hard is typically, I use that with nervous, anxious horses, unstable horses, weak horses, pullback horses, or if I'm in a warmer climate or with a really big horse, you know, like if I'm in Florida, that's the only one that changes texture. The warmer it gets a little softer. So I use it a lot in Florida. And I use it a lot with the big horses. Right? Firm has lateral give. We start into lateral give. So if the horse is basically calm, I can start with firm. Medium is springy, and soft has the most give, which you usually work hard to soft because you don't want to surprise them. You know, if it has too much give, they're like, whoa, I'm out of here.
Totally.
Right? And then the other thing we have is a full and half physio pad. Half is just half the size of full. And we started calling that farrier pad, but we changed to physio because so many people in Europe that are physiotherapists are using it. It's only 1.5 inches, and it has 2 different materials, 1 inch of the hard and 1/2 inch of medium. We have 2 working surfaces, and the whole plan behind that is offer the horse comfort while the farrier's working on him. So you don't want the instability of the 2-inch pad. You want something lower, although like I've seen Clydesdales on the 2-inch hard pad while they're being trimmed. Totally fine. You can use the other pads, but that was our idea behind it. And then that physio pad, and this is something I'm just going to throw out because we're getting more reports of this. If your horse is colicking, call the vet. And if you have a physio pad or a half physio pad, go out and start sticking it underneath their feet. Allow them to choose which foot. But I've had a number of cases now where the colic stopped before the vet got there.
Wow.
Right. So do your ear work, do your belly lifts, do your gas point, do all your T-touch, stick them on a pad.
Yes, and for those of you out there that don't know that there's amazing T-touch work for relieving some of the colic symptoms. Obviously, always call your vet, but there's some really great ways to support your horse in the meantime. And thank you. That's great, Wendy, to know that this is. And that makes sense with the nervous system and calming, getting the parasympathetics working and rest digest. Yeah, totally makes sense.
Get some good brain chemicals going.
You got it.
Gut. Yeah, it's
nice.
Really fascinating about these reports that are coming in. And then we have a veterinarian, Dr. Sherry Johnson, who just did a 2-day workshop at Rood and Riddle in Lexington, Kentucky, which is a huge vet clinic, using Surefoot pads with neurologic horses.
Fantastic. I was just going to ask about that. I have an ataxia client and yeah.
So the thing about neurologic horses is I always tell people you must call your vet and get a diagnosis.
Absolutely.
A lot of different reasons for neurologic symptoms. I was just in Costa Rica and they have something called staggers, which happens to do with
right? Yeah, and they've got a few things over in Australia, I think, as well. Some different they have like mosquito-borne things as well. Yeah.
Right. So you really need to call your vet and have them look at your horse and figure out what is going on. And in the recovery phase, under the veterinary supervision, you can use Surefoot. But this is a veterinarian now who did a whole presentation at Rood and Riddle about using Surefoot for neurologic cases as a veterinarian.
Awesome.
Huge.
Amazing. Oh my goodness. So, and I can just see where this is all going. There's just like lots of spaces to this.
I feel like I'm hanging on a kite right now.
I bet. That's amazing. Congratulations. And thank you for your research and your work and your care for horses, Wendy. It's really, really shows through. I'm excited. I'm just like, oh my God, I need some for this horse and this horse and this horse. Yeah. And I'm sure that those listening are very interested to hear how to get in touch with you or how to maybe make an order
I just want to say, nothing's 100%. And there are some horses that are not interested in Surefoot, right? Typically those horses don't need it. And the ones that really need it want it. That's kind of
I know. I was thinking about my mare and I'm like, I don't know if she'd go for it, but I would be very interesting to try. And
it's so fascinating. Yeah. And I've had horses where nope. And then something happens and they're like standing on 4 pads and they're like totally cool.
Now I need it. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if people want to get in touch with me, I have a website. It's Murdoch Method, MurdochMethod.com. On Facebook, it's Murdoch Method, but I also have a Surefoot Equine page, and please join that. And then I have a fans group, Fans of Surefoot Equine, where you can ask questions and get more information, and people put up, what they've been doing with their horse, and it's a really nice interactive group. And then on YouTube, on the Murdoch Method YouTube channel, I have lots and lots of videos. Got webinars and short videos, and the quick start guide and some cases and a really great before and after. So lots of videos on my YouTube channel, which is a great place to see this in action, because when hearing it, seeing it, and then seeing it live are each a different experience.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And also I wanted to if there's any resources that you wanted to share at the moment, we're also going to post everybody who's listening on iTunes and Spotify. If you head on over to wholehorse.ca, you'll find this episode there, including all of the links and resources for Wendy and the Murdoch Method. So yeah, just before we close off today, Wendy, anything that you would recommend for people to check out in support of this work, or anything that you just love?
Well, for me, it's giving the horses a voice. And I think that's the thing that drives me, is giving them a voice and choice. And when we start to do that, they realize that we're listening. I think that they're whispering all the time, and we're the ones that need to listen. And, Surefoot gives us all the opportunity to see. It's like magnifying what's going on and seeing what's happened in the horse, and really recognizing that they just want to be at peace. That's really what they're looking for, and that we can offer them that tranquility when we stop to listen.
Yeah. Lovely. And I'll include the one video about the circulation to the feet. What's your friend's name?
Oh, Bob Bowker?
Yes, for Bob Bowker. And and we'll also include over at wholehorse.ca, I'll get Wendy to send along any other resources she might have that that you really enjoy, or books that you like, or, because
okay,
you've
yeah.
got so much good stuff that way. Like, I'm just loving all of your many years of doing this work. So head on over there. There'll be lots of good stuff there. And thank you so much for coming on and taking the time today, Wendy.
Oh, my pleasure.
Aw, and thanks everyone for listening in. It's been great to have you here, and I'll be back with more podcast episodes very, very soon. Okay, bye for now.